Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. It's a pleasure to be with you and a real distinct pleasure to welcome Ambassador Terry Miller, the former ambassador to UNESCO and the director of the Center for International Trade and Economics at the Heritage Foundation. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for coming on the program tonight.
I'm delighted to be with you.
Now, I always tell my audience that I'll admit if I have a dog in the fight, and I do when it comes to Taiwan. I was born there. I was born in Taipei about 61 years ago, and I've always liked the country a whole bunch more than I like the mainland communist Chinese. So I wanted you to talk about the Taipei Act, which must have taken some doing to get this to happen, the Taiwan Allies International Protection and Enhancement Initiative Act. Congratulations. The president has signed this piece of legislation. Tell me what it does to help get America and Taiwan a bit closer together than they have been.
Well, of course, Taiwan and the U.S. are very close allies to start with. And what this act does is it's a strong expression of support on behalf of the United States for Taiwan, particularly in this time of crisis related to the coronavirus. But this act predates that, really, in terms of its initiation. The idea is to help Taiwan participate fully in international organizations and allow it to be a full member of the international community. Taiwan, the Taiwan government, and the people act in a very responsible way and have a lot to contribute to the rest of us in terms of their scientific knowledge, the products and services that they produce. They have a very active free market economy, but they're under incredible pressure from the Chinese government that wants to exclude them from international organizations, even the w.h.o, the World Health Organization. And the Taipei Act throws the weight of the U.S. government behind making Taiwan a full member of the international community.
At some point, does doing that, because I want to get into some of the specific advantages of that, but at some point, does that mean that the United States is going to have to reject this one China policy, the one that has the mainland Chinese communists, if I understand this correctly, and I think I do, saying, we are all one country. Taiwan is just this breakaway province, but they're really part of mainland China. The Taiwanese, of course, say, no, we're not. We're our own country. But the United States has to officially take the position that the one China is the official policy that the United States recognizes. Have I missed anything there?
Well, the one China policy has been around for a long time. And I think maybe in the first instance, it's up to the people of Taiwan to fully reject that idea. They and we have been ambiguous about that, I would say, for a long time. It's absolutely clear if you know Taiwan as you do or you visit the country, it's an independent place. They're completely self-governing. They act in every way like an independent country. And there is a bit of a fiction involved in trying to maintain that Taiwan and the mainland China are one country, but that fiction's been maintained by both sides for a long time.
Yeah, but not by the Taiwanese. The Taiwanese have said we're entitled to our own elections and everything else, and it's specifically in the coronavirus or China virus situation. Taiwan had a very good defense built up, even though they have about 10 million flights back and forth between the mainland and Taiwan. They do business with the mainland Chinese, but they began checking flights and put up a real solid defense against the coronavirus and kept most of it out of their country and defended their own population, while Wuhan and Hubei province were overrun by it and had thousands and thousands of cases. But when they went to the w.h.o in late December and said, well, we've found that there's a new disease emerging in Wuhan, the w.h.o thoroughly ignored them and wouldn't share that information with the rest of the world because they don't see Taiwan as a full member of the World Health Organization.
Yeah, the United States has taken a position for a long time that Taiwan needs to be treated, well, if not as a full member of the World Health Organization, at least as a full observer member on the same basis as countries like the Holy See and others like that. It's an absolute travesty that Taiwan's advice was ignored in the early days of the coronavirus crisis. They acted in exemplary fashion. They saw what was going on very fast. They responded very fast. And they've done a good job of protecting their own people. I looked at the figures just now, and only 5 people in Taiwan have passed away from this disease. And that's a record as good or better than any other country in the world.
I mean, can you imagine, I'm talking to Ambassador Terry Miller, who's at Heritage Now, director of the Center for International Trade and Economics. Taiwan's a country of 23 million people. Can you imagine if Southern California had the same success in controlling coronavirus in a state of 30 million people or so, or New York State with 19 million, fewer people in New York State than are in Taiwan? If New York had only had 5 deaths, imagine how amazingly good that would be.
Yeah, I think the comparison with New York is particularly apt given the size of the affected population in the New York City, New Jersey area. And it's just that Taiwan responded very fast in a way that enabled them to shut off travel, control, they tracked contacts of people who had been infected with the disease. And they really set the standard for response to this for the world as a whole. It's just really unfortunate and even tragic that the World Health Organization was not able to take advantage of the expertise and advice that Taiwan had to offer.
Yeah, for comparison purposes, New York and New Jersey that you just mentioned, Mr. Ambassador, 200,000 cases between those two states right next to each other, and pretty close to 8,000 deaths in those two places. And of course, those numbers are going up on a daily basis. What else do we need to know about what America has to do to make this actually mean something? Since it was a bipartisan bill, people of both parties voted for it, the president signed it, it's now part of American law. What does it mean? How do we go forward from this point?
Well, I think the most important thing is to maintain our existing levels of cooperation with Taiwan. On the defense side, we need to make sure that they have all the equipment and are integrated with U.S. Forces in an appropriate way, that the cooperation there is very high. It has been and needs to remain that. But we can do more to work more closely with Taiwan. One idea that my colleagues and I have had is to pursue a free trade agreement with Taiwan, between Taiwan and the United States. I know the government of Taiwan is very favorable towards this, and I think the U.S. government could be favorable as well. And this would help deepen the economic ties between our two countries. They're already strong, but they can be stronger and on a more solid ground going forward.
Well, I know that right now, I used to know the numbers better, but within the last couple of years, I was told that something like 50% of all the desktop computers in the world and about 90% of the laptop computers in the world are made in Taiwan. So if we needed a great place to make all the electronics that Americans like so much, if they could take over the precursors for pharmaceutical products, heck, we could just tell China, we don't need your precursors anymore. Taiwan's doing a great job, and they're so much more like us. They're freedom-loving. They elect their own government. Their government is responsible to and protective of its citizens and their rights, unlike communist China, which is just about the polar opposite of that. We'd rather do business with Taiwan than you.
Well, I think that's absolutely right, and a free trade agreement would be a strong signal of that, and would be a strong signal to other countries in the region and around the world that the U.S. is still open for business and trading relations with countries. The idea of world trade is a little bit questioned now by a lot of people, and yet it's brought profound benefits to the United States and to many other countries around the world. And so I think it's important that we not let a crisis like this become an excuse to shutting down the world trading system. And we need to keep that going, particularly with important allies like Taiwan, countries that work like we do, that think like we do, that respect freedom in the same way that we do. We share so many values with the Taiwanese people. I think they're just an obvious partner.
Absolutely. Ambassador Terry Miller from the Heritage Foundation, former ambassador to UNESCO. Ambassador Miller, thank you very much for the time. We'll be back in just a moment on the Lars Larson Show.